So, John, my name is Professor Chris Palmer. I'm on the full-time faculty here at American University, at the School of Communication, and I direct the Center for Environmental Filmmaking here.
Right. So you've had plenty of experiences I've read before, but do you mind telling the camera and the audience like about your experiences and yeah, please.
I've been making environmental and wildlife films for about 30 years. For television, for the web, and for IMAX. I produce films for the global network of IMAX theaters. Produce wolves and dolphins and bears and other IMAX films. So I have extensive experience in film production.
Right. Okay. And you have set up the Classroom in the Wild, if I'm not. Can you tell me why you have undertaken this project?
Well, I set up the Center for Environmental Filmmaking because I wanted a vehicle which would train the next generation of environmental and wildlife filmmakers. We need to make some changes. We need to look to make films in cleverer ways, in more innovative ways. We can't just keep saying the same old things over and over again. So we need fresh blood in the system, and the Center for Environmental Filmmaking is aiming to achieve that. Now, we have lots of programs within the center. One of them is Classroom in the Wild, and we take students to Alaska, to Florida, to Costa Rica to learn about what it's like to make films in the wild, and they're very successful and a lot of fun.
And like what? And you said you were trying to train your students for new blood in the industry. And what do you tell them? What kind of advice do you impart upon them?
Well, there are two main pieces of advice that I give to my students. One is about the ethics of wildlife filmmaking, and the other is about the efficacy of wildlife filmmaking. In other words, there's one question is about how you make these films. Are they made ethically? Are audiences deceived? Is the deception acceptable filmmaking artifice, or does it cross a line into unacceptable deception? And do audiences get misled? So ethics is one issue. Then the other issue is the question of efficacy. Do these films make a difference? Do they matter? Do they have an impact? And the answer to that question is complicated because it's hard to measure the impact of a film. But there are certain things we do know. One of them is that when you make a film, you want to make it part of a campaign. In other words, you don't want to produce a film and just have a film by itself and that's it. No, you want to link it up with work of related NGOs. You want to obviously have a website. You want to produce a companion book. You want to write articles about it. You want to have speakers who go out and use the film and take it out to schools. You want to have NGOs, non-profit organizations, use the film to promote their mission. So in other words, when you make it for a film to be effective and to really have an impact on conservation and the way people behave and on the politics of the issues that we're concerned about, toxics, climate change, and so on, you have to have a film that is multi-layered, multi-platformed. You need to, when you produce a film, you need to produce it for IMAX, for theaters, for television, for the web. You need to get out in multiple ways. It's no good just producing a film, show it one night on PBS and that's it, and you walk away, oh, I've done my job. No, as a producer, your job is not done until millions of people have seen your film and taken action on it.
Okay, wow. And I mean, you said there are multiple ways of like addressing how well a film does. Can you just address how well a film does? And like, I mean, obviously that's like ticket sales, whatever.
Yeah.
But is there like a broad way to address that? Like when you have a film about saving dolphins, I mean, how do you think people are actually gonna like? How do you address whether people are actually gonna go help but save dolphins?
Judging the effectiveness of a film is very hard. I used to think, when I got into television 30 years ago, I was naive. I thought that the rating for a film related directly to its conservation impact. But that is naive. That just isn't the case. In other words, just because a film gets a high rating doesn't necessarily mean that that film has had a high impact. It could just have simply been entertaining and distracting and people enjoyed it, then forgot about it. Now, but there is a relationship, because if no one watches, there's going to be no impact, right? So there is a relationship between ratings and impact, but it's complicated. So your question is a good one. How do you measure it? I mean, so there are the obvious things that you can see, like, was it reviewed in the New York Times? What was the rating? Did it win at festivals? And these things, but that still doesn't really get to the core issue of, even if you get an A grade on all those, it's reviewed well, it wins at festivals, and it gets high ratings, does it mean, can you therefore assume that that film has had an impact on conservation? No, you can't, because it may do all those things and have no impact. Because what do we mean by impact? Well, what we mean is that action is actually taken. In other words, a viewer watched your film, and then they went out and they voted a different way. They gave their money to support a local conservation group. They volunteered their time at the weekend to work on that issue, work for a nonprofit working on that issue. So those are what we really want to achieve, those action steps. But you can never really tell. When you show a film on primetime television or in a IMAX theater, it's very hard to go from that to those action steps. There is a connection, it does happen, but it's hard to establish it scientifically, that because someone watched this film, they voted for a more pro-conservation president in the elections. It's hard to make that connection. It does happen. And the other thing to remember about all this is that learning takes time. I used to be very impatient. I used to think, listen, if that film that I've just finished showing at 8 o'clock on primetime television, if that doesn't have a direct impact on people's behavior, then I have failed. But I have come to realize over time that that is too stringent